Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. Send us your emails to dj@artistfirst.com. Here they are, your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Z-Man, and I am Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
Yes, and I'm listening to everything very carefully tonight.
Good.
Good. I always listen to you very carefully.
I know you try.
I do try. See, that wasn't exactly the affirmation I was looking for. Well, I'm going to leave it right there.
I would suggest that.
I would suggest that. I think I need to be refreshed. Tonight's show is about listening.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the interesting things about conversation is that you need two things in a conversation. You need to be able to express your thoughts, and you need to be able to listen. And if you don't have both those things, you don't have much of a conversation.
That's true.
And yet, we all know good examples, or we can all cite examples of people who think that a conversation is just speaking. That you want to express your points, and you want to make your make the other person understand you, and get your point across.
Well, I think it's fascinating because most people get taught, well, you have to contribute to the conversation. But in the mind, it's like making a donation. It's like, this is as much as I'm willing to give.
This is all I got. I've given my all.
This is all I got.
And it goes clink. Like, oh man. Well, yeah, but you're right. Well, I don't want to digress too much. But oftentimes a conversation is really. Some people think of a conversation as being two people who are in an active verbal interchange.
Yeah.
But yet, most of the time, and we wrote about this just a little bit, but most of the time, it's really one person waiting impatiently for the other person's lips to stop moving.
Well, they want to make their contribution.
Right.
So they're not really, they were told that you have to contribute to the conversation. Doesn't mean that you listen. It just means that this is what I got.
Right, and you can find people whose excuse for a conversation is in essence a parallel play, literally just talking in turn. Your turn to talk, my turn to talk, your turn to talk, my turn to talk.
Taking turns. It must be a conversation.
It must be right. At least we're taking turns, right? I'm letting you talk. I'm not listening to you. I'm watching
I'm waiting for my cue.
I'm waiting for my cue. You're watching your gums flap and this utter wretched nonsense come out. But we're having conversations. I'm letting you get your crap out. That's not it.
No, but that is the general idea of what people think of as a conversation. I mean, just observing, and if you're just observing the way a small child does, it's like there's words, there's noise coming out of that person's mouth. They stop, and the other person that they seem to be talking to starts with their words or sounds coming out of their mouth. And, as a baby, you're just like watching this going, okay.
And tonight we want to talk about the essential quality that's missing there, which is listening. And I would postulate that a conversation can be had where you say almost nothing.
Yes.
And in fact, the essence of the conversation is allowing the space and we'll talk about Tolle's quote in a moment because it's lovely, but literally opening yourself to hear the other is the beginning, the gambit, the opening gambit of a conversation is saying, I'm ready to hear you. So I'll just give you as an example because you're a wonderful example of this. People would come into the store or any situation that they'll meet with Margaret, and they will almost without understanding why will give their life story or a portion of something that's really troubling them. And the reason they do that is that you, particularly you and others, particularly you, greet someone with an openness to hear their story. So the opening gambit of the conversation is, I'm listening to you. I hear you. I'm ready to allow, to give you permission to speak and be heard. And these people who encounter this are, first of all, almost taken aback. They're almost astounded. Someone's willing to listen to me. And then before they understand why, there's this pent up in the back of their psyche, this pent up need to say something that's been bothering them, something that's troubling them, something that, and it just comes out because the void, or not the void, but the openness, this space is there. And someone is looking at them, catching the first part of it is you make a soul connection, and then you say, in essence, without any words, I'm ready to listen to you. And almost without their volition, their innermost thoughts, the things that are really giving them angst, come out. And they almost, as they say them, they're like, why am I saying this? And and then they start crying, and it's just a mess. I've witnessed this many times. They just turn into puddles. But the point is that it begins without a word, without a, well, I'm here, you're on the clock, lie down on the couch, tell me your troubles. No, it's literally a greeting, but a subconscious, but on a heart-to-heart level. I'm willing to receive you and listen to you. Now, and so they give you, they take a small leap of faith. Why? Because there's a bridge extended here, a little bridge that says, you are a human being. You are worthy of being listened to. That's it. And then you don't say to them, tell me your troubles. They just tell you whatever's there.
Usually the first thing.
The first thing is, my husband, his stuff and everything. And you're like, go on. And then they just start crying. Terrible to witness.
Oh, I'm sorry you had to suffer through all of those.
No, it's good. At the end, they feel so connected and so appreciated and so cathartically unburdened. They never, years and years and years go by, and they recognize you, walking by in a crowded mall or a store. It's Mark, and you're the person who's done it. And you're like, who are you? Because, there's just too many of them to remember every blessed one of them. Usually you can drag their memory back if they talk for another moment. But initially, it's like,
well,
who are you?
It's been years usually.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily recognize
But it was
them.
very significant because of the
But what I do remember is the energy of them.
Yes, exactly.
That's what I will remember, all the details of the story they told me, but I won't remember their name.
Well, yes.
Sad,
or you reconnect, and sometimes they'll say, well, you helped me so much, and you're like, all I did literally was open and listen. And here's the other thing about listening, which is an amazing thing. You don't have to solve their problem, nor do you have to comment on it.
No.
You almost have to give them no proactive advice. You don't have to say, oh, well, you do this and you do that, and then and I do this and I do that. No, that's all talking.
Yeah.
When people come to you in grief, literally, not just you, but come to you in grief, literally just writhing in pain, and all you do to them is say, and not even words, but say, I'm here. And they tell you these things, unburden themselves. You receive that thing. You don't say, oh, this my uncle too, and then my dog died. And all that's crap.
Yeah.
All that's crap. All you do is say, I hear you. I witness you. I receive you as another being. And that is the precious gift. That's enough. You don't have to tell them all about your lumbago. You just have to hear. You have to hear about their pain.
Yes.
Relating is not saying, "Oh yes, and I had that thing too." No, that's talking. That's saying no.
No, that's it's. When you do that, you're speaking through your
butt.
I was going to say ego.
You're blowing smoke out your nether end stuff. Ego. That's the same thing.
I see.
It is pretty much.
But that's usually not what they're requiring or what is needed in the moment.
No.
It's usually not your ego that they need.
Absolutely never your ego that you need.
That's the truth of it. People make the mistake believing that it's got to be me.
I've got to relate.
It's got to be my ego, so I've got to think of a situation where I've gone through it too to relate to them.
Yeah. Oh, look, I did that too. Like, no, that's crap.
And that's not what that is about. When a person is looking to unburden themselves in a manner that is spacious enough, they're looking for a space that is big enough to be able to contain what it is that they're carrying.
Yeah.
And one thing that seems to hold is the fact that the more trouble you've been through, the more pain and sorrow and grief that you've experienced, or horrors of life that you've experienced, the bigger the space you can make for someone else. Because usually people come to you and, they're afraid to do that because they're afraid they're going to overwhelm somebody.
Yes.
There's not a space here big enough for me to unburden. But when they find that there is a space that I can open to unburden my soul, they usually take it with two hands because life has shown them that it is a very rare encounter to come across.
And it comes across as this isn't quite the right word, but it's a strength. The capacity to be open and listening is an amazing kind of strength. And what I mean by that is, as you said, you've gone through things, and you don't need to tell everybody about them, but they sense that this is a person who has the capacity, and developing that capacity is only done through your own personal struggle, because your struggle, and in overcoming that, you expand. You develop the capacity to realize that it's not the ego, that it's not the body, it's the being, and the being is vast. And once you have the vastness, and you connect, I said it before, but you connect first in the eyes, and in that first connection, without any words at all, there is an echo of, I will listen to you, in essence, in so many words, but there aren't those words. You don't say that. It's just they know it.
What happens in the look is that, first of all, are you present?
Exactly. Yes.
Because the soul that's present behind the eyes, again, the eyes are the window of the soul. Well, when you look into the eyes, you will be able to tell whether or not the person is actually looking back at you, or are you basically interacting with some kind of outward face that they've made up to interact with the outside world.
Persona, yeah.
So when the soul of the person is there, and you know it because there is light and fire there in their eyes, and they're usually struggling with a problem, so all those elements are mixed in the glance that they give you. And when they perceive that there is another person there, fully there, and unafraid, maybe that's the best way to term it, of a direct interaction, because, you know, the trouble that you are dealing with, the first person who's dealing with this trouble realizes that, wait a minute, the person's really there. And so completely grounded that it would take a tremendous amount to shake this one. It's you can say a feel, but it is being absolutely in the moment, completely open and unafraid, just unafraid of what's going to happen around the corner.
Right.
And when people see that, they're like, okay, maybe I can say something.
I'll take the chance because I feel that, and it's not even, again, nonverbal.
Yeah, it's a possibility. The possibility opens. Maybe that's the best one. And a human being knows when there are options available, freedom available. The pathways to freedom are always something that a human being feels.
You sense it.
Yeah, and when you know that certain options are closed or certain roads are too narrow to try to attempt to bridge, they won't take it. It's like, no, this is, I might destroy what little I have there. They may have been trying to build a connection to this person and realize that if I open up in this particular way, I may just break that connection so completely that it would be irreversible.
Yeah.
And that's all unspoken evaluations that happen. And it's not an easy thing that can be explained. It's got to be experienced, so that you can build on your relationships. I mean, once you start doing that, you are also building in relationships in general, not just with someone who might be willing to listen.
Exactly. I mean, the overture is unspoken, as is when you meet someone. Maybe this is a little digression that's worth exploring for a moment. When you meet someone, the very first assessment that you do with that person is nonverbal. It's often overlooked. It's often overlooked, but you sense the other's energy long before you first greet them. And in fact, why do you greet one person one way and one person another way? You may not observe this in yourself, but if you take a moment and realize how you greet another is, if you're at all skilled in it, is different based on the person. It isn't because they're one thing or another, or old or young. It has to do with their energy. You can sense immediately at a very nonverbal level a direction for a conversation. And it has little to do with who they are or what they actually look like. It has a lot to do with their energy. So once you sense their energy, and then this is where the beginning of any relationship starts, is that you sense the energy of the other, perhaps without understanding that you're doing that, but you are doing that. And so that first interaction with a troubled soul is you, if you are aware enough, you can feel that they are troubled. You can't necessarily put that into words. Oh, this one's troubled. If you're extremely skilled, you can do that at very fast. You have to do it very, very quickly. If you're going to bring it into the present expression, within your mind, say, oh yeah, this one's troubled. But you don't have to. Your presence and the other's presence will mesh together long before you greet each other in a verbal sense. And there's a communications channel which is nonverbal. You've all done it. You don't know that you've done it. When you pick up an infant and look into its eyes, you are already communicating with that infant. And you are. And you don't have to do anything. You already have a good feeling of each other. Because because why? You know when you pick up this infant that they're not going to talk to you. However, it's why people like dogs or pets in general. It's a nonverbal energy level communication.
Yeah, you don't.
People say it, Margaret. They go to the dog pound, they pick up a dog. This one loved me. This one I connected with immediately. What do you mean by that? You didn't talk to him. You didn't interview them. You didn't say, well, exactly. What points will you do for me? Will you bring in the paper? Will you? No, none of that. You say you felt that they were the right dog for you. Well, isn't that an odd thing to say? How did you feel it? What was it? It's absolutely the truth, and it's the correct expression. Never walk away from that. But the way you got that impression was not verbal.
Right.
It wasn't ego. It wasn't mental. It was on the level that we're talking about all the time at the being to being interaction level, which is subtle. But it's there, and it's there long before you utter your first word to another. So this being comes into your presence, and you enmesh your two presences. They interact, and the being to being, long before you say the first word, influences what word you say. How you greet them. So you greet them, and in the case of Margaret in particular, you greet them with something which is openness, which is I am here. I open myself to you. I connect with you in presence. All these words are not necessary. None of this happens, but you sense it. And these people, as a first of a little verbal interaction, some sort of, whatever it is.
The word you could use is warmth.
Yes.
There was a warmth in the exchange. And it's a good way of describing it, because the openness and the warmth is there, and they feel that. There's no other way to explain that. There's a warmth, and you're comfortable there. There's nothing, they're not looking at you realizing that, there's something to fear or something like that. It's like, no, the openness, the connection, I'm here, you're here, and then warmth, which means it's okay. And it's as simple as that. It's okay. And then suddenly, I've been thinking about this. Could I ask you? Sure.
Yeah. And there's a little testing that goes along there with it. Sometimes their words are still hesitant. They're still unsure, especially if people have had bad experiences in the past. And so they're guarded, or they're a little fearful, a little untrusting. And you could liken that, we use the analogy of the dog again, of a dog who's been abused. And almost, even though they connect, the presence connects with yours, they're like, I can't, I don't know if I even trust that anymore. I've been so ill-used. And people get that way too. But yet there's a depth of connection which is beyond abuse, and it's beyond these ill-usings of that have happened to them, and they realize that yes, there's a channel of trust, a current of warmth, which reaches in, and oftentimes it can be expressed, in just as you said, just the physical terms. There's an openness, there's a softness, there's a willingness to entertain them at the level of a being. You know, I see you, I hear you. These are the words you use.
Yeah, the interaction is there.
Yeah.
And I like you. That's usually
I like you. Yeah, that's a good one. You know,
like you.
I like you. And, you know, all these things we've been talking about are conversations. They are not verbal. They are not talking. You know, the wonderful expression, no touch, no talk, no eye contact.
For dogs. Yeah.
For dogs, but it works beautifully because the first openness that you, in greeting a person without any words, the first openness that you give them doesn't require talking. It doesn't require any kind of ego-based, I'm this, you're that. Well, I'm an accountant, you're an accountant. We must be the same. No, none of that. It's all about the energy. You are projecting forth in your in and of yourself, whether consciously or unconsciously, largely unconsciously, unfortunately. You're projecting forth your being, your energy, your presence. The other comes into your presence. Your presence is like a field. You know, it's something larger than you can than your touch. It isn't your hands. It's your energy field. Whatever distance it is, your space. You come into your space. That's a great way to put it. And there's already an interaction. That interaction, if you have a long history with them, that interaction may be colored by ego forms or by pain body or by lots of things. But if you have no interaction whatsoever, it's just your presence. Now, you in and of yourself may be projecting coldness and don't touch me and I don't want to deal with you. That's a critical. And
energy, criticisms.
Right, and you know when you come to someone whose presence is like that, or it's chaotic, or it's pained, or you can feel right away this other is suffering.
Mm.
And then but if you make the unconscious or conscious decision to open anyway, like Mother Teresa is going into the worst slums, the worst terrible suffering conditions with openness and looking at these people as beings, as human beings, as deserving as any other, one in the sight of God, so to speak, one under spirit, and immediately making that human heart connection. That's the first part of the conversation. Then they may have specific needs, they may have specific troubles. None of that actually matters. It isn't what. It's far before that. It's I see you, I hear you. Tell me anything. Openness.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it is permission at that point.
Permission, that's a great word.
You have allowed, you basically interact and say, okay, I will listen to you, which is I give you permission to speak to me about what it is that's troubling you.
Mm.
And when that is said with that kind of openness, in other words, there is enough space to contain whatever it is you may have to say, people usually take it.
Yeah.
I've not seen many who are able to, be the word,
almost deny themselves the connection.
Mm-hmm.
There's a banquet set in front of you, but yet you won't eat.
Mm-hmm.
And that
starving yourself.
Even when invited, even when say, here, sit, eat. No. But this is often an ego form that causes that.
Well, it's that and
or blocks or something.
It's usually some incident that may have happened.
Yeah.
And they're cautious. So all of it, it's like it doesn't matter. I'm not sitting there judging.
Mm.
You should open to me. Like no. That's your decision to do what.
Exactly. It's completely. The other thing, I know we have to go to break, but another thing here is that listening is not a process which demands that they speak. You merely are listening. You aren't saying, you must tell me everything. Anyway, you know what we must say? We must say that let's go back to the studio. Let's listen actively to a couple of these wonderful commercial breaks, and on the other side, well, maybe we'll do the quote on the other side. We completely blew by the quote, but on the other side, we'll talk more about listening.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is book 1 of the adventures of Devkalion, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lynes, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
Moonstones and murder. Real murderers need a heart of stone. Meet Maggie and Mike Heartstone, parents of twin boys, entrepreneurs, and now empty nesters. Mike is retired, not by choice, from his position as chief of police in the picturesque resort town of Hamilton. And now his wife Maggie and her shop, the Cozy Crystal, are their only source of income. When a mysterious killing interrupts Hamilton's famous Springfield Park rock show, the townsfolk, the Cozy Crystal, and their lives are rocked to the core. Can Mike and Maggie figure out who is behind the murderous deeds before the town comes crashing down around them? A touch of romance, a little mayhem, and a whole lot of suspense, along with plenty of comedy and thrills galore. Get your crystal magnifying glass out. It's time for some moonstones and murder. Available on Amazon, Apple, Kobo, and other fine e-tailers in ebook and paperback. Out soon on Audible. Get your copy today.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Brag Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Hi, this is William B. Davis, the actor who plays the Smoking Man, or did play the Smoking Man on The X-Files. I'm also a writer, director, producer, and I am delighted to tell you that you are listening to the ArtistFirst radio network.
Listening to, pun intended, The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
You are listening to, and just keep listening, damn it. Hi. We are talking tonight about listening.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. And let's lead off with the quote, because we have a lovely quote from Eckhart Tolle, and he's always very pithy.
Yeah.
So listen to this.
Okay. All righty. When listening to another person, don't just listen with your mind. Listen with your whole body. Feel the energy field of your inner body as you listen. That takes attention away from thinking and creates a still space that enables you to truly listen without the mind interfering. You are giving the other person space to be, and it is the most precious gift you can give. Eckhart Tolle.
Mm. And isn't that the truth? I mean, yeah.
It is.
We've said this before. What you value, you give. What you give your attention to, rather, you value. And when you open yourself and listen to another, they feel valued. You know, the old expression, "I hear you," which is often said, unfortunately, in a very trite way. I hear you. But the truth of it is, and this comes in, Margaret, when in the Jewish tradition, there's something called citizenship. If someone has gone through a great trial, or they've had a huge loss, a death, you go and you literally go there and you sit with them. You aren't there to do anything except be in their presence and maybe just hear their grievances, hear their pain.
Or their memories.
Whatever it is, but you're just there. The whole idea is not to go there and talk at them. You're not there to lecture them, to tell them all about you, which is unfortunate. When we were in the cancer wards with Christopher, oftentimes people would come and try to sympathize with you aggressively. You know, they're there to, right? They're there to tell you all about their troubles so that you'll feel better. Not so much. The point of being there as a witness, as an open space, as a presence, as Tolle says, giving the other person space to be is doing a lot for them. It's validating them. It's seeing them as a being. It's giving them it's valuing them by your attention. You know, when you have small children, the thing that they value most is you just being there. You know, we have grandchildren, and when we sit down with the grandchildren, we just sit down next to them, and you're in their presence, and you interact with them just on the level of whatever you're doing, let's just do that. And I'll listen to, they're telling you things, and you just listen to them. And that's it. That's the trivial but most important secret of anything is if you still your inner self, you still your ego self, rather, and all the things you're thinking about, and just pay attention. Open yourself, be still, and pay attention. The other will feel valued. They'll feel like they matter. They'll feel like that this other person is really, really loves me and cares for me. Because why? Because you're just allowing them to be in your space. Isn't that just a lovely thing? That's the basis of relationship, is that you value the other. You value them by just being with them, by just listening. Conversation isn't you walking through the door and telling the other all about your troubles and how much you had this and this and this. And you're like, this is a conversation. No, it's not. It's a diatribe. It's a harangue.
Well, children know automatically that as a parent, you spend time with things that you love. Whatever you love, you will spend time. So that's why it's so important to spend time with your children. Now, I understand that, you've got to work, you got to survive, all there. And when you explain that to the child, they will understand. But you have to make the effort to be with them and let them see that you're trying to be with them. And it doesn't mean that you have to go to a special place like Disneyland or, you have to make an adventure to some place. All they really want is to be with you. And they want to know that you want to be with them.
Right, under any circumstance.
Right. And it doesn't matter if it's good or bad, okay? Many times in the pediatric cancer wards, the fact that there was a mom or a dad there with the child going through everything with them, whether it's a treatment or just being there to let's play a game kind of thing, or let's watch this movie together, or let's go back and forth and have a conversation. This is really the time to teach the child how to have a conversation so that they can at least express exactly how they are feeling in that moment. And in that kind of situation, there are many problems that arise that if the child is not given a space to express it, can work negatively on them. They'll begin to go internal and not express anything.
Shut down.
Yeah. And it's difficult. So when they get older and they realize, this is who I have got to deal with. This is the parent that I have. And this is how he or she deals with trouble. But they're always open to try to understand things. And they do the very best they can to understand what's going on. But it's nice if an adult is able to translate for them. Many times they'll ask their nurse or their doctor question. And it's a telling question. It shows that they are comprehending much more than maybe the parents have been discussing. In fact, I remember one young man who was our roommate. And he came in, he was cleared of cancer, but he was having an issue. And so whenever he had an issue, he would only go back to his doctor at that point, because he knew that a regular hospital wouldn't have the background,
wouldn't have his history,
and his history or what he may be reacting to, etc. So no matter what it was, he came right back to his doctor. And he was a sweetie. Older, he was a teenager at that point because he had overcome his cancer. But his story was very tragic because his mother was addicted to drugs. And she was addicted to drugs when he went through this trial. So he had to rely on, I believe it was Dr. Tan was his doctor. and spoke to her about a lot of things, and the nurses. It was just, as I said, a very sweet individual. But at this point, he was, I think he was 17 when he came in, 17 or 18. And he was our roommate, so I had gone out, and he was like, "Oh, I'm here, not to worry. You go do what you have to do." He basically was saying that, I'll keep an eye on Chris. Well,
ambitious, but yes.
When I came back, he looked at me and he said, "He's really smart." I was like, "Oh." Yeah, I was talking.
Pray tell. Here we go.
I was talking to Chris, and I was asking him questions like this, and Chris just looked at me, direct look at me, and said, "You mean this?" And yeah, we've gone through that, and just answered him as
like an adult.
As an adult.
Yeah, that was Christopher.
And the young man just he's like, "Nah," I dropped that immediately.
Right. He's not a kid.
This is not a kid.
Yes.
And so he and Chris would have conversations about things. And he was amazed that he could have an adult conversation with him. So he wound up asking me questions because his mother was still addicted.
Yeah.
And she wasn't there. Or she was there as much as she could be. Maybe that's the best way to put it. But he would ask me questions about relationships. What's a regular relationship like? I was like, okay. And that's usually at night when Chris finally fell asleep.
Yeah, but in essence, that openness to as a person who would be a mentor, who would be someone who could actually talk to.
Mm-hmm. So we had some conversation that way. But it's just understanding that every person has something that they're struggling with.
Yeah.
Everybody does. And some people have had their hearts broken more than others.
Yeah.
But everyone has a wound. And until that's acknowledged, in other words, you're a human too.
Yeah.
We understand. You're feeling the pain of this life. We understand.
I mean, it goes, okay. Again, we mentioned just briefly Mother Teresa, but if you think of the story of, let's say, Buddha or anybody who's appreciating the depths of the human condition, the fact that we all, as you just said, we all have our troubles. We all have our individual journey through life, which is not always, puppies and cookies and kittens. And in opening yourself to listen, you also acknowledge the humanness of the other, and that nothing, as you said last half hour, that you're not going to overwhelm me with whatever trouble or whatever trial or whatever suffering you're going through. I have the capacity to listen and not, immediately spout back, "Oh yes, my dog died too." No, it's it's not about me too, which is, remember the whole thing between sympathy and compassion. Compassion is listening. Sympathy is talking. Mm-hmm. Oh yes. Oh yeah, my mailbox got knocked over too. Oh, all these friends. No, compassion requires no words. Somebody comes up with this terrible trouble. You don't have to solve it for them.
Right.
You don't have to tell them all about your lumbago.
Right.
You have to just listen to them in compassion and just say, the best thing you can say to them is, "I hear you. I can't imagine going through what you're going through, but I'm willing to hear you."
Right. Being honest is usually the best thing, because it allows people to see that suffering comes in all different levels, sizes, shapes, colors.
Right.
And it's something that we human beings do really well. okay, we know how to suffer.
Well, yes. I mean, and we, if we are honest with ourselves, you realize that that person's suffering could easily be ours.
Mm-hmm.
And that in hearing of their suffering, we're acknowledging that they're not being singled out.
Right.
That they're just currently the ones who are suffering now, and that we may be the ones suffering later. And what we're doing for them is being a presence,
Right.
another human being, another being in this world, in this veil of sorrows, as the saying goes, to whom you can relate your current experience, your current troubles, and in fact, with whom you find a commonality, with whom you can find strength. You know, the wonderful phrase in Longfellow's poem, you know, to see the footprints on the sand and know that another wounded brother traveled this way before me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that
footprints on the sands of time.
Footprints on the sands of time, which is exactly it. In hearing them, you're seeing their footprints and realizing that they're walking a path which you may be required to tread, and we're all walking a path which will eventually lead to, in this world of incarnation, to a death, to some form of suffering, whether it's the same or different. And that in acknowledging that, you say, you are a being in this world, I am a being in this world, and at that level we are all connected. We're all the same, we're different, but we're all the same in the sense that any one of us could be called upon at any moment to walk through a little bit of hell, and that hearing about another's experience of that little bit of hell helps.
Well, it's again the acknowledgement of the tear in the heart. That's about the best way I can put it. Usually what happens, and it's always well-meaning people that believe, you know, they're older and they believe that they've gone through a bit more and they can share their experience with you. But you realize that they do not make space for somebody else's experiences. It's only valid according to my experience. That's really this, like, well, I'm older and I'm going to talk to you and give you the benefit of my experience. It's like maybe you weren't asked to express your opinion. And you find there are those that will do that. They feel that they have every right to do that because they're old now.
You know what I would say, though, is it takes so much more courage to listen than it does to talk.
Yes. Well, it's the incident that I'm thinking of is there is another mother who had lost her child. And there was a meeting of a group of people who were trying to put together, it's a charitable organization. They were trying to hash out things, the details of the organization, of the project, you know, whatever the project was at this point. But what I remember is one of the women there is very opinionated and basically feels that, you know, well, I'm a compassionate person, so I have to extend whatever I'm thinking or feeling to this other person. And she knew that this woman had lost a child, but proceeded to blither on about other things, about how, oh yes, you know, it was a while ago when you've lost a child, you know. In other words, you must be feeling better. And I remember she's like, today is my son's birthday. Certain days. And she looked up and she caught my eye. She saw me. She's like, oh, you know. I just nodded my head and just opened my arms. And I held her. And just held her. Because she was suffering in that moment.
Yeah.
And I said nothing. I said nothing.
Just exactly. No. Nothing was required.
Right. It's useless to talk. Maybe that's the best. Talking brings it to this mental level, and that's not where the suffering was.
No.
It was not mental suffering she was experiencing.
Right.
Her broken heart was there again, and she needed a space to allow it to be released into. So it's like, yes, just hold.
And the acknowledgement, you see, the words are such a defensive mechanism.
Yes.
When people have to talk at you, what they're really trying to do...
They put you at a distance.
They put you at a distance.
When they talk
They're
at you.
quantifying everything. It's been so long already, and it must be okay now, and I did this, and you did that, and you're right, you just said it. They're very well-meaning, but they're also clueless, because what they're denying is the fear is that this person could be me, I could be this person.
Yeah.
And in talking at it, you're just trying to push it away.
Right.
It must be you. It's all about you, and these are the things, and why didn't you do this, and why didn't you do that? And it's a fear that talks. Fear talks.
Yes.
Compassion says not a word. It opens its arms, and it accepts the shared burden of pain. And in doing that, you lessen it for both, but it takes courage, tremendous courage to say nothing and just to be present and say, your pain could be my pain. Your suffering could be my suffering. And I don't need to tell you about it. I need to allow you to bring it into my presence.
Well, you're allowing them to move through it. You need space to move through these things.
Yes, exactly. And if you shut them down with words, there's no space. You take all the space away. You're like, I'll tell you that, and they're like, okay, I can't. That's wonderful, great. I'm going to move on, because all you're doing is
you're draining me.
Draining me with your jabber that I have to deal with.
Well, it's validation. The person that's talking at you wants validation.
They want agreement, yeah.
They want to be acknowledged as a being who is compassionate, and
that's a wonderful point. They want to be acknowledged. Right. They want to be given an attaboy. Oh, you're so sympathetic. You're so wonderful. Aren't I wonderful? Tell me how wonderful I am.
Yeah.
And you're like, shut up.
No, it's just like, oh.
Oh, yes, you're so wonderful.
Is that so?
Is that so?
Yeah. And you at that point, you're just like, okay, what damage control's got to get done?
It pushes, it closes down the heart level and makes it into the mental level of talk, jabber. And so, the true compassionate heart, as you just said, doesn't need words. In fact, words, by their very nature, get in the way. Yes, you can use them as initial foray. I'm here. But you don't even need that. You just need to let your energy project the presence of I'm here. And you do this almost effortlessly, it seems, at this point. If people come in and without a word, there are already puddles of goo on the floor. It's great. I mean, it's amazing, really. It's a superpower of some kind.
Don't believe him, people.
It's the truth. Oh, you know what? Speaking of puddles of goo, we're on the floor at this point, so why don't you wrap us up?
Oh, we've reached the end of our show. And I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael, and thank you for listening.